I think I'm going to get started.
Yep.
I apologize. I'll, Ellen, you'll hear this on the recording. I apologize in advance that you're having difficulty, but I'll get going and then we can follow up with the recording.
I'll go ahead and mute.
Okay. All right. So I wanted to talk about development activities. There's a couple things that have been going on. Partially because we're, of course, using Windows servers for the regions. There is kind of regular maintenance that has to be done to keep everything humming and working the way it needs to work. So we're going to institute a weekly maintenance window, grid maintenance window, basically 4 p.m. grid time every Wednesday. We may not actually do maintenance on any given Wednesday, but we want to basically set aside the time, and with the grid should be down for, if it's down at all, because and because there's something to do, the grid will be down for the most part for about an hour. It could take up to 3 depending on what's going on. And when that's happening, we'll put notices in announcements to try and give you indications of what's going on so that uh, you understand it. But basically, what we're going to do is set aside. And we used to do that. They used to do this in SL as well. Patch Wednesday was always an experience. Hopefully, we don't pick up the negative aspects of that. But like I said, the goal is to be able to do maintenance on the servers and potentially rollouts of software and things like that. So that will go on our calendar, which is on the website. So there is a grid-wide calendar, and you can use it to check. Now that we're doing regular events on Saturdays, those are also on the calendar. I'll mention that a number of you attended yesterday and really appreciate the turnout. It was a lot of fun. We're going to do those every Saturday for the most part. Uh, we also have meditation going on twice a week, which is also on the calendar. So use the calendar as a reference point for those kinds of things. And like I said, we'll use that time to do server maintenance or potentially to do software updates and rollouts and so on. Um, the the other thing I want to talk about is kind of new work that's been going on. So I'm going to drop some screenshots in um, the link into the current chat, and so you can see these things. I can talk to them. Really wish I could do screen share. It's another case where this doesn't work quite like I would have expected, but there's some updates to the website that are coming, and I want to share those. So there's two separate new development items that are going on. And I'll beat Judy to the punch. The transaction list does not currently support exporting CSV, but it will when it's finished. Although I'm not going to hold this up, I'll get this up on the site as soon as possible. I know Judy had originally asked for an exportable transaction list. This is it's on. So the other thing that I added recently that I should talk to is we have a beta grid now. There is I'm using that because of some of these kinds of developments. I need a place to do testing that is connected to the public internet, and also because of some other developments that I've been working on that are fairly intensive. That uh, I need a place to test those before we roll that out to live production. But both of these things are in test in that environment now, um, and the couple of things. The transaction list is pretty self-explanatory. Hopefully, there's not a problem that it captures the stuff that you need. I can look at a couple of enhancements, and I will, in particular, searching. So that I'd like to be able to make it so that you can get a transaction list and search it. I also like to be able to limit the number of transactions. Right now, it's not a big deal because there's not that much going on, but as we really get up and humming, that list could get quite long. So I'd like to be able to limit the size of it and let you control how much of of those transactions you can get back. And finally make the column sortable so you can sort based on name or date time if you want to look at a time range and things like that. So, and then finally, as I mentioned, exporting to CSV so you can do those kinds of things offline in a spreadsheet. On the second item, the PayPal website, the PayPal purchase, this is for purchasing Skybucks for use. The note at the top specifically mentions their use. It's basically our token-based currency that's up and running now. I can do these kinds of operations manually. In other words, if somebody wants Skybucks today before we have this portal dashboard entry live, just send me a note and I will get you an invoice and we'll set it up and purchase them and I'll get you them funded to you. There's a banker avatar that holds the current funds for the grid, and that's where you'll see payments come from. And the way this website works, it will report your current balance at the top. You can see this is an example basically of mine. There is a text input area for how many Skybucks you want, and the dollar balance, the cost of that is calculated and shown. And then you have a couple of options. All these are sourced by PayPal, but you can use regular PayPal, you can use Venmo. PayPal has an option for some balances to pay later, so you can basically use it as credit instead of via PayPal. And finally, you can use PayPal will do credit card processing, so you can use your own credit cards as well if you don't want to just do a PayPal transaction. There is one other option I'm looking into, and it relates to the reason it's not here now is that it relates to how transaction costs are calculated. And I'm going to need to roll those into this, obviously, when you make a purchase. But the website theoretically should be able to support selecting a currency. So if you want to buy the Skybucks using British pounds, you should be able to do that instead of just saying US dollars. There's like 20 or 30 currency types they support, and I can potentially add that as a pull down. I'm going to look at that as well, but again, I will probably get this site out as is first so that we can get started, and then I'll add that as an additional enhancement later. So both of those things are in test in the beta grid and on my development servers, and they'll be rolled out as soon as possible. Hopefully not more than a week, but I don't think. As soon as I have everything up and tested and running the way expected, I'm using the PayPal has a kind of development sandbox where the transactions aren't real, but they get reported like they would be. And I'm basically using that as a mechanism to test. And then at some point, I'll have to flip a switch and do real live transactions. So all of these things will generate entries in your transaction list. So when you purchase Skybucks, you'll see an entry in the transaction list showing the purchase and be able to track that as well. So that's the main kind of short-term, going to be delivered soon development item that I've been working on. I want to switch gears and talk a little bit about development because I want to set expectations. I've had a couple of correspondences with people that express frustration, frankly, with the time frame that's involved in some of this development taking place. And what I mean by that is that they expected things like low bits quicker and Kitely purchases faster and things like that. And I totally understand the frustration. I when it as a developer, when I support a product, I really want it to work when it's released and out 100% the way it should be working from the first. And in this case, it's a little bit different because we sort of made the choice to use Halcyon um, because you wanted it and because the community itself wanted it. And so we're out with something that isn't 100% fully baked. to the kind of level that I would like to personally see it. So I apologize for the frustration, and I know it's real. It's real for me too. I would love to be able to spend the kind of development time that it would take to fully get this stuff up and running much quicker, and have us all have an environment that just works, and we're getting there. And I'm going to continue to work in that direction. Um, the thing I wanted to kind of underscore is that from my perspective, I still have a full-time job. Um, so this is sort of a labor of love to get all of us the kind of environment that we really want. And I probably can spend about 10 hours a week outside of my regular full-time job just doing development. And that unfortunately has to mean the website and the grid and all the kinds of things that have to be done, setting up a new beta grid and all that stuff factors into that time. So it limits how much I'm able to make progress on any one thing. Uh, but we're definitely still chipping away at it. So I didn't want you to think that nothing was happening. Um, we're definitely working on it. I'm going to be doing something in the very near future. Callie actually came up with this, and I was a little reticent at first to do it, but I think it's the right thing to do. I'd like to be able to put up a survey and basically let you give us feedback on what things are the most critical um, for new work. I mean, for instance, you might say, "Oh, I want ores because I have other things to bring in that I want to be able to load." Or, but although I more likely you're going to say, "I want glow bits and a currency that I can cash out," and that's a guess on my part. But and I'd rather not guess. I'd really like to let you tell me where you think our priorities should be, and that's how I'm going to order things when I do development. When you see the survey, you'll also see a line that says we can't guarantee. None of this is making promises on delivery times and anything else. It's all going to take the time it takes, given my constraints. But I really would like the feedback, I think, and being able to understand your priorities and where you feel we would best be putting time in the short term in order to get some of these features taken care of. Hopefully, the work I did on the transaction list and currency purchase is a example of me getting something right where it enables us in the short term. But the feedback is definitely going to be appreciated. Um, the other reason I'm mentioning all this, the time and everything else, is I took on a project recently, and I was just thinking with this 26 item bug really ticks me off. Frankly, I don't get a lot of time to do in-world development anymore, but the time that I do spend, I often end up hitting this issue. And it felt like something quick and that I could do that was surgical and just get a big win, because all of us have been living with this for quite a while. So I did set up the development environment to do the development on that and started working on it and tracked it down to a library that's in use in the program called Libra Metaverse. And so I went looking for the source code because I was going to fix it and update just that library, and then we'd be all set. And the version of the source code that's in the tree with the rest of the code for the grid is not correct. It's actually not up to date. It's older and predates this change, the fix that's the library that actually we're running now. So I thought, okay, well, that's great. I'll go looking back at the source, the what we call upstream, the actual place that the library is maintained. And they had versions of this going back about 2.5 years. But the last time this library was touched was 2016. And there literally is no source code for it, of the specific version that we're using. So I'm kind of stuck. What was hopefully going to be a quick surgical fix now turns out to be me taking and porting the current code to the current version of that library, which has 6 to 8 years of changes in it, that uh, all have to be factored back into the current code. So in the current state of it is that I'm actually doing that work and making good progress. It's come along quite nicely, and a lot of the changes are in there. This also is required in order to get estate stuff working and a lot of the other issues that relate to protocol incompatibilities with the current viewer. So it's a really important change. I would have preferred to have just gotten the 26 item fix first and then moved in that direction, but kind of got my hand forced. And so we're going to go there in the short term anyway. Um, this is the primary reason for a beta grid because the changes are so significant. I want a place to run this code for a period of time to really shake out problems before we put it live in production. So the basically it's coming. The work's already, I would say, about 80-90% done. And as soon as I get the rest of the code changes made, I'll put it up on the beta grid. My goal is to try and get you to be able to have access to that grid as well if you want to help with testing. Um, and I'll use that as a way to shake out things that are larger developments like this. The good news is we'll get this 26 item bug fix out of it, and hopefully some other things that are, I think, been holding the grid back in terms of compatibility with current Firestorm and things like that. So, um, all of that leads to the last thing I want to talk about now, and then I'll switch gears and we'll let Callie talk about the new main website as well. Um, I've the changes I just talked about, this 26 item fix and upgrading libraries and other changes to Halcyon proper. Um, we talked about this in the past. Those things are being kept proprietary. I'm going to keep them in a tree that represents our code. So it's to benefit the residents. And there's been I'm not gonna there's been a history of some tension and problems with Halcyon in the past with regard to uh, how the development has taken place. Really, nothing has changed in quite a while, and the project is mostly kind of dead, in my opinion. Um, and I view the current work that's being done on our grid software as new work. Really, it's taking this code base and upgrading it to current standards and things like that. And I thought for a long time about who sort of performed that role for the original. Halcyon was forked off of OpenSim in version 0.6. Where OpenSim's now at 0.9. And when that happened, David joined the company, Tranquility joined the company not too long afterwards, and he pretty much um, was the heart and soul of the software. He basically took it. He created Flocks. He created the PhysX integration. Balping did a lot of the work for vehicle physics and things built on top of that. And I made my contributions in other areas, like mesh and appearance and multiple wearables and all kinds of stuff. So a lot of us built on top of that foundation. But Tranquility really was the reason that um, Halcyon became what it was. And I've been in contact with him on and off for the last couple of years. It's been a little while since we chatted, but I sent him a message and said, "Hey, I'd really like to name our version of Halcyon after you." So going forward from this day forward, and I'll be changing some of the things that are in the source code that reflect this. Our version of the grid software will no longer be called Halcyon. It will essentially be a fork of Halcyon, and its new name is Tranquility, in honor of the person that, in my opinion, kind of shepherded this thing and really made it what it was during the in-world heyday. So um, like I said, it's going to maintain. By the way, I did write Trank when I wanted and told him I wanted to do permission. I didn't really have to do that, but I thought it would be important for him to know that we're trying to recognize all the hard work that he put in to get it to the place that it was. So, like I said, Skye-Grid will be running Tranquility Grid software in the going from here this point forward, and it's going to be our software and to benefit the grid as a whole. Um, I really appreciate the fact that all of you have signed on to this. Like I said, I've said this numerous times. It was this community that made me decide to want to kind of get involved and really make this a labor of love to try and resurrect the software and really get it back to where it was in the Inworld's heyday with upgraded for current standards. Um, and I think it's important to recognize our history and where we came from, and for that reason, that's the reason for this change. So. Um, and I'm seeing mostly positive feedback in the chat channel, and I appreciate that as well. Trank was a real pleasure to work for during the time that I did in terms of him giving guidance, and I'm hoping that we can make him proud with the stuff that we do going forward. So, um, I think that's mostly what I wanted to talk about. The I'm sure there will be questions. In fact, I welcome them because we touched on a lot of stuff, and I think I've got everything covered. I mentioned the beta grid, the maintenance window, the rename. I've shared the screenshots, so that's good. And on the development process, I will be putting up. Look for an announcement about the survey that we're going to put up, where you have a chance to give us some feedback, and then of course we'll report back on the results of that. That's going to be an ongoing process. I think we're going to circle back and ask you what you think is our priority. Often, because so we can keep focused. Um, I don't actually have the grid stats available, and I will get those. I'll post those to SG Welcome, so you have access to those as well. Just a quick verbal: we've lost a couple of regions, mostly people that I think either were overexposed with all the stuff that's going on financially in the world. Were a little overexposed and needed to cut back. In one case, it was a person that just felt like development wasn't happening fast enough. And again, I can respect all of that stuff. I'll just keep doing what I'm doing and stay focused, and hopefully we get where we need to be. Um, so I think that's everything. I am going to turn it over to Callie to talk about the website, and then we'll open things up to questions.
Great. Thank you. I have to tell you guys, excuse me, I have some allergy stuff going on here. Um, of all the things that Mike has said, for me personally, I am most excited about the engine name change and the fact that obviously we have Trank's blessing to do it. And it was not just an homage to Trank, but also for me personally, and I'm hoping for the community too, with a nod toward our future, right? To the type of environment we're trying to create, a tranquil place where people can dream and build on those dreams and community can be fostered. And I know I'm an idealist, so I understand, that that's not everybody's viewpoint, but I just think it suits. So I'm super excited about that and, about the other things. Before I go to the website real quick, I do want to touch briefly on the survey form. So Discord doesn't really have an easy way to do surveys in it. Um, but we do have a survey type of setup with Google Forms. And that's the mechanism we're going to be using for the surveys. So it is something that we're just kind of putting together. So it'll require a little bit of feedback from you guys too. So when we first put it out, we'll need to know things like, are you able to do this without having a Google account? The answer should be yes, that you should be able to without having to, sign in. Um, the other thing is, do you mind, letting us know that these were the things that you want? Because if so, then we can kind of give you feedback and supply the answers that you've given to us back to you so you can keep a record of them. So it's, we need you to kind of work with us for the first few of these things until we kind of set forth a process or pattern. And then once we do, these things will be coming um, at some type of interval. So I don't know what that looks like yet, but it might be something like, every other week or once a month, or when a development update gets pushed, something will come out in advance of that. And I think in this way, we can try and at least make sure that we've got kind of the pulse point of what you guys need to see versus what we need to have happen for the business. I mean, obviously, we want to make sure that security is top priority. So do realize that even if something is highly voted on, if there's a security thing that needs to be fixed, obviously that will take priority. But all of this is about communication and ways to do it better, ways to make it understood that we are doing this not for you, but with you, because we're here too doing it for ourselves, right? So that's really kind of where we wanted to go with this. Um, so that's what that's going to look like. Um, so it's kind of this nebulous kind of arrangement, but look for that in the coming weeks. We'll put something together, even just a trial one, so you can see what it looks like. So, unfortunately, one of Discord's other shortcomings is that in the stage type of environment, such as we use for the state of the grid, you're not allowed, there's no option or way to share your screen, which would be ideal for what I'm about to do, because I don't know how many people have multiple monitors or a mechanism to, flip back and forth. So in SG Welcome, I'm going to link what has been my project for the last week or so, and that is a complete and total revamp of the website, along with kind of breaking things out. What started way back when in 2002 as a gaming community has really kind of grown to be so much more. And there's pieces along the way that aren't even mentioned. I mean, at one point we had a peer-to-peer writing school called the Castle Bailey, and we used to help people get published. And as a community, we also have published a book. So I mean, there's so many things about this overarching kind of entity. So we thought it was time to kind of you know, um, lift up the curtain, so to speak, and let everybody kind of see the things that really make us tick. And Skye-Grid is one of them. It's become one of our forefront endeavors. And so this new website represents it. So I had hoped to kind of take you through the website, but because I can't screen share with you, I'm going to have to leave it to you guys to do so. I'd be happy to answer questions about it. I'm happy to take people through it. It is hopefully self-explanatory. I tried to make sure it was user-friendly. Um, so, if you're able to look at it or when you're able to look at it, I think the most important thing I would point out to you is that the navigation bar at the top is there at all times. So if you ever get lost, you don't know where you were, you don't know what you're trying to do, the navigation bar is always at the top for you. And then on the upper left, the logo icon will always take you back to home. So those are the things that I kind of want to talk through. When you click on, for instance, the Skye-Grid section, you can get to your dashboard pretty quickly. We'll have a link for the latest Firestorm viewer. We have a page with how to connect your viewer, how to create an account, how to get to your dashboard, support. Our calendar, Lola, you had asked about that, is on that page. And it is the official calendar, so this will be official events. Like our meditation events are up there. Our weekly maintenance is up there starting this Wednesday. Um, and our first club, GT Club, is on the grid and ready to roll. We had our first kind of kickoff event yesterday, and it went really well. I think everybody had a good time. And so that'll happen every weekday, every weekend, every Saturday. at 11 o'clock grid time. And there is talk of another club coming to the grid, and I look forward to that too. So, things are happening, things are coming, I mean, this is good. This is all good change, but progress is not always overnight. What was the saying? Rome wasn't built in a day. Well, tranquility won't be built in a day either, but it will be built, and it will be the best thing you've ever seen. I can pretty much guarantee that, even if I am a little bit biased. So I'm going to leave you guys with that and kind of, otherwise, I'll talk and never shut up. And you guys may have questions that you want to ask. So I'm going to go ahead and mute and open up the floor for questions.
While we're doing that, there's one other quick thing I wanted to mention. I'm not going to go into a lot of details because this is mostly focused on Skye-Grid, but we're going to be making some changes to Utopia Skye-Grid, which is the OpenSim based version. Kind of been moving in this direction for a while anyway, but we're going to extend it a bit. The way Utopia Skye-Grid is currently now, the default for new regions is pretty much closed, and individual region owners can ask for their region to be open to the outside. And we're going to continue to do that for individual regions. We're also going to continue to keep the Creators Guild regions, which is where all the stores currently live, open to the outside, so that people that want to put merchandise up and sell to the hypergrid as a whole can do that. But the rest of the grid, including some of the clubs and other activities that we had previously tried to do on Utopia Skye-Grid, are going to be closed. So it'll be largely a closed grid, except for those cases where individual region owners would like their grid to be open. The reason for that is just all the stuff that's been going on in the hypergrid lately, and specifically security related stuff. We had one of our residents, Utopia Sky residents, have their content botted, and it's been showing up on Sacrarium and other places as copied content. I feel terrible about that. It really breaks my heart. And thankfully, that resident still is very much enthusiastic, actually, about joining us on Skye-Grid once the currency issues are everything is fully implemented there. So there's been no change in that regard. But the OpenSim community, to me, and at the cost of potentially ending on a negative note, has gotten to be pretty toxic. And so a lot of the activities, we're really going to focus our activities on Skye-Grid and the closed grid going forward. And like I said, USG will largely be closed except for cases where people would like to have their region open, or for the Creators Guild. And we're going to maintain both as we have been. But I just want to try and be a bit more protective of some of our residents' content, because it really makes me upset to see somebody have their work disrespected, frankly, like that. So anyway, let's get back to good stuff. The questions. Yeah, so Ellen is asking about not seeing history in the website yet. And so that's true. It isn't fully released. I showed that as work in progress. It's being tested currently on the beta grid. I expect the transaction list especially is essentially done. So if it comes down to it, I can roll just that piece out to the website on the publish side, and I'll do. I would expect to see that next week. The PayPal transaction thing needs a bit more work, and that's why I've been holding both of those changes. like I said, if I have to, I'll split them and roll just the one out and then do the PayPal right behind it. Even the PayPal thing's not that far from done. It just, I'm testing with their sandbox environment now. I'm trying to work out the main issue that remains is the transaction fees for each of the options, so that I can capture that information as well. Uh, but yeah, so the transaction stuff's coming. Yeah, Tosh asked, does USG being closed mean we can't bring things in from the hypergrid? No, so USG will still be allowed to talk to Kitely, which is using the hypergrid protocols as a delivery mechanism. It'll still, as a resident, you'll be able to go out and purchase things or pick up things via the hypergrid and bring them back. It just means that by default, somebody else won't be able to come to visit a region on the grid unless it's open to the hypergrid, like the Creators Guild and individual regions. Like Tosh, in your case, you'd asked for your region to be open because you share it with some people. So yeah, there's no change there with your region. You'll be able to come and go and do things as you normally would, and others would be able to come in as well, but they won't be able to go from your region to other stuff on the grid. Yeah, Lola, yours is open as well.
You'd have to actually request your region via ticket to be closed, for you, Lola, because you were here. Your region predates this, so yeah. But new ones will be closed by default.
So this is again what we're talking about is it's for us mostly we're concerned about an update for Skye-Grid, which has always been closed. Utopia Skye-Grid, it has traditionally been totally open to the hypergrid, and over the years, the hypergrid environment has just gotten more and more difficult to deal with. There are small dream grid instances that people run that basically run older versions of the protocol, but by choice that make them incompatible or problematic with ours and things like that. So, and the main reason, honestly, is that there's been increasingly more cases of content theft, um, and people's intellectual property disrespected. And I just don't want to be uh, the reason that happens to somebody, to be blunt.
It really
Um,
kind of feels like to me for OpenSim that there are two camps. There's the one that I call the sharing is caring camp, where they believe that spotting content or liberating content, as they call it, literally they've told me this, is okay and allowed and heavily enforced by them. And then there's the other camp of people that are trying to bring content in by creating it and or trying to sell it for a nominal charge. And we have unfortunately experienced, on the other side of that coin, with our creators, there have been some that have taken heavy flack for charging for their objects, in the form of emails and messages on their OpenSim page. And one of our creators was chased out by them. So to the point where he just closed up his shop to only USG residents. And it's just become so toxic. It's drama. you know.
well, and I think the other takeaway is that for Callie and I as individuals, SkyGrid is our home. That's the thing we're putting our energy into. Uh, I still maintain the Sasquatch, the OpenSim version, and I'd like to uh, continue to look at bringing a lot of the improvements that I've made over there into SkyGrid, so that we all have the benefit of them as well. And I'm going to continue to maintain that release just because there's benefits to staying involved in that development. I can track things that are going on with the current viewer better and things like that. And honestly, it takes very little time for me to do the maintenance that I have to do to keep Utopia Skye-Grid running. I've had a couple of years to kind of fine tune that whole process, and so it's pretty self-maintaining. But our home is Skye-Grid. That's where I'm putting our energy now, and the Skye-Grid community is the thing that we're largely trying to take care of. So Tosh and a few others, I know you guys are on Sky. That doesn't mean we don't care. um, and I'll pay attention to that as well as needed. Um, but I believe that that really the closed grid environment, and a lot of the people that are here are content creators, and they want a place that they can create and sell content effectively. So I'm our focus is largely going to be that, and we'll continue to do maintenance work on Utopia Sky, keep it running. But um, home is Skye-Grid for us. And if anybody that's listening that is on Utopia Skye-Grid has concerns about this, please, please, please come and approach us privately, and I will do we'll do whatever we need to do to listen and hear you and address your concerns, because I don't want to leave any of my customers kind of stuck or wanting. Okay, so the Skye-Grid main page. So as Callie was saying, there's a Utopia main page now, which has pointers to the individual things that we're doing. That includes Utopia Skye-Grid, which is the hypergrid version of the software that's open to the outside. And there is Skye-Grid, which is the closed grid, halcyon, now tranquility-based grid that we're largely focused on. So two grids, primary focus is Skye-Grid, and both of those are accessible from the utopiasky.com main website, or you can go straight to well, we can't yet actually, but the dashboard eventually will be reachable via www.skygrid.com. So Utopia Sky is the main point of entry. The Skye-Grid thing will to our dashboard site where you can do the maintenance. Yeah, so the dashboard is where you can currently log in or register an account. It's going to have those two pages I shared earlier, which is the transaction list and so on. Yeah, so I mentioned I don't have the stats available. I will publish those in Discord, and I'm actually going to create a landing spot on the thing. I did mention that essentially we've grown in the number of users. We've added some new residents. We've lost a couple of regions. Mostly those were people that either downsized because from financial perspective, they couldn't maintain the number of regions they had, or in one case, they were just frankly frustrated that we weren't progressing fast enough. But we're largely the way where we've been all along. It hasn't changed dramatically. So, but I will publish the stats as soon as I have them available. Yeah, thank you for your comments, Flamey. It is a lot of work, but I think it's especially with this change that I'm doing with the library. Once that's in place, it really kind of enables a lot of other stuff to take place as well. So, and I'm really looking forward to nailing that 26 item bug and kind of making it an end result. Just gone. Oh, Judy, cool. Thank you. So I can comment on these numbers. Region count now, based on the changes, is probably 125 roughly, with the bulk of those being maybe 95 private regions, maybe a little bit less, 92. The rest of them are public, and the region count is very much the same. The total users has gone up by about 10 people. We've had a few people join, so. And I will make it so that these stats are available on the site. I'm working on a splash page and things like that that'll have that information.
If I can add something, I hope it's received well. I One of the things I hear often is, "Oh, it works over here or it works over there," and frankly, um, I'm just gonna be blunt. The only other Halcyon derivative grid that I'm aware of currently that's up and running is, um, well, I don't remember the name of it.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, Savaria. That's it, Savaria. And uh, uh, one of the people in passing who has, you know, left Skye-Grid, um, made a number of quips. I think some of you were there when they were made publicly about how everything's working over there and da 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 da. I don't really want that comparison stuff anymore. I mean, even if we were exactly the same, we're still not the same. You know what I mean? And now we're so different from them, even if, and despite the code change, the engine name change, we were still different from them or any other, Halcyon derivative grid, just in our security and feature offerings. A lot of times, and we've had this experience here. So the only way I know how to explain it is what we've gone through in our house here. We've got this major renovation going on. And for the longest time, it just seemed like nothing was happening. The guys were out here, they were working, nothing was being done. And it got to a point where I literally slammed my hand down in frustration, like, I just want this done, and but the thing that you have to understand, and the thing that I learned from that is that you don't see things under the hood. It doesn't mean stuff isn't getting done. It means the framework is being built. And that's oh so important here in particular. Anything that might be done currently that you might wish that we would be doing, the biggest thing I can think of is cash outs. I can I can with 80% certainty tell you is not being done securely. And you need to be careful of that. People, and this is why I think people have found themselves in this boat a few times, is because, people are just like, "Oh yeah, we'll do this, we'll do that, da, 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 da," and if it's too good to be true, sometimes it is. And I think the first thing priority wise for us, as said it before, is security and safety. And I think you guys are on that page too. When you came to Skye-Grid, you didn't come to a place that was going to be up and running right away. You came to invest in something that would be up and running for the long haul. And that's the difference right there. I can't speak on what they're doing or what any other grid is doing, and I'm not going to going forward because we are not any other grid. We are Skye-Grid running the Tranquility engine, and that's vastly different than anything else. So I'm gonna get off my soapbox now.
Well,
Sorry, I just had to say it.
and uh, uh, and you are all our customers, and that means that we want to hear from you. If you are frustrated and if you are or you think things should be done differently, it's important to hear about that stuff. So, and I want to make sure that we're moving in the right direction. Hence the survey that we talked about. All that is predicated on the fact that this is just going to take some time to get where we're going. But I want us to all go together because, like I said, this is home. I'm emotionally committed to making this work, as I know is Callie, and I'm really pleased that we can honor a past developer uh, in the process because I think I'd like to capture some of the spirit that he brought to Halcyon when it was created. So anyway, we've got that to look forward to. All that being said, some of the features that I've shown you are going to show up soon, and the beta grid is going to start to get busy because we're going to do more testing there, and more software features will get rolled out, and we're going to be coming to you to ask questions about where your priorities are. So, and in the meantime, we'll try and have some fun events and do some things on the grid to really make it feel like home. Thank you. I'm going to just thank everybody then for your time. Thank you for coming and attending. And uh, and we're just going to keep doing our thing. So thank you for being here. And this is recorded, so it'll be available if you want to go back and listen, or you missed something. And I just want you to know I appreciate you all.
Yes, me too. Have a great rest of your day and the rest of your weekend. And Tosh, that was really funny. I actually laughed out loud. Have a good one, everybody.
Thank you.